Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Amestris Audio. I am Quint866.
And we are finally back. My name is Katashiki Otsusuke.
Feels
I am
great
one
to be
of
back,
the
huh?
I am one of the main Otsu I am the main villain. The main villain of whatever, like, if you know where it's from, you know where it's from.
Hey, hey, hey. Are you the real deal? Are you the real deal? If you know where that's from, you know where that's from.
Yes.
Alrighty then.
Um
Well, let's waste no time and get right into it, huh?
I hate it, right?
hmm
When I have the urge on a podcast, even when it's one of those one-off moments, and I'm just like, I hate that. I hate that because like I used to get called on it, out on it so much, and
Yeah. I know that feeling. You know what's really funny is that
so
you know that feeling when you get like a crook in your back because you've been sitting or like leaning in or away from the camera. God, that happens to me a lot on stream. It happened on my Fatal Bullet streams. That's why I've been using my VTubing avatar. A, because someone made it for me, and B, because this way I can just sit down in whatever position is comfortable. My VTubing avatar will move emote accordingly.
also um I'm still recovering from a massive cold, so if my voice ever sounds uh kind of like weak and like it's drowning out,
Sounds like it's
that is
groggy.
because that is because it is very severe. Like it was very severe. I mean,
Yeah, you told me like 2 weeks, right?
yeah, yeah, it was
Damn.
one of the worst ones easily. It went
Damn.
on for fucking ever.
Well, okay, with that, we are on episode 9. Be Val for the people. Also
Okay,
in
I'm just
parentheses, the dogs of the military Silver Watch.
um
We know this as the Mining Town episode, so
I'm just gonna quickly mention that this is actually like people might find what I'm about to say bizarre because this is definitely one of my more unconventional all three takes, but this is one of my favorite episodes of all three.
this is a
Actually,
pretty underrated episode, honestly. It's pretty
yeah,
underrated.
like I think it does a lot right, especially for the story. I mean, like here's the thing, right? Like the way Ed's whole depression arc starts in like seven just kind of goes on for a few episodes, and like I think this is good for having him like it's basically his reset period where he needs it shows some more adventurous sides of all three, where you get some world building to like and like I think the point is to kind of show him like if it's like if he helps towns and stuff, he'll feel a little, he can feel a little better at a time, that kind of thing.
And I
You
gotta
know,
say, Ed is pretty down to earth in this episode. I mean, like, obviously he kind of has to be, it makes sense. But I was actually kind of surprised how,
also,
one, yes, you're right, he most definitely is still recovering from the events that happened in the last couple episodes. But I gotta give credit to the kiddo for saying strong. Who you calling a kid?
um,
Or short,
this
but
is
yeah.
actually, uh, this is actually the only time I've ever found Yoki like at all interesting. By the way, like, I
I don't know
actually think
why
he's a
Brotherhood cut this
pretty
out. I don't know why
like.
Brotherhood cuts this out.
I actually think that Yoki is a pretty intimidating figure until the end here. Like, honestly, like I actually think that in terms of like the story kind of stakes, he actually does do a lot of damage to the town. I mean,
And not only that, but you
um,
remember how back in episode 5, the train episode, Bald was
yeah,
like, the state military is full of a bunch of rats, and he really hated them. And keep in mind, we saw people like Shao Tucker. Something that the FMA has made no secret is that there are some not so good people in the Amestris state military. And I mean, Yoki basically taxing these people is yet another example to add to the list.
yeah. And like, and also, I'm not gonna lie, right? Even though he takes the L at the end, you know, it's like a certain something else. It's a satisfying payoff. That's what it is. It's the way it's done is at the end. I really feel like this character that just really angered me got what he deserved. Like, I was like,
Absolutely. And
thank
honestly, I mean,
goodness.
remember the people. Keep in mind the people. They were not welcoming to Ed, knowing he was, a someone who worked for the military. But at the end, they kind of grew to respect Ed a little more. But also, Ed in turn realizes, the state military has some not so good people in it. It's kind of a wake up call for both of them.
Mhm.
Obviously, I mean, you have Lyra as Lyra, Dante, whatever, as your profile picture. This is her introduction, and there's actually some intrigue with Lyra being there. I mean, she was like introduced as like a bodyguard to Yoki, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that's like they actually. Here's the thing: she actually, the concept of her exists in the manga chapter it's based on because you can actually see someone in the foreground who has her kind of design,
Yeah, who
but
resembles the same
you
facial
can,
structure and all that.
yeah, like you can just barely make it out. Obviously, it looks way different, but like it's you can still tell it's basically the same idea.
Yeah.
Um, and the thing is, they used one of those backgrounds as a template, and they went, okay, so this is who will have show up at the what do you call it again? It's like some kind of cafeteria area, like I
Uh,
think.
yeah, I guess I'd call it a cafeteria, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like some place with a table
Hmm.
and wine or whatever. Like,
Like a
um,
pub, a bar.
no, 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 no. That's the other one.
Oh, oh, yeah, you're right. What am I saying?
Yeah. By the way, she does actually show up there first, which I have to give credit. The way they utilize the areas, I think it's very organic here. Um. So
You know what the
because
mining town kind of reminds me
nothing.
of? I'm sorry to just very quickly bring this up, but the mining town kind of reminds me of I'm not sure if you've seen the Studio Ghibli film Castle in the Sky, but the mining
Yeah,
town kind of gives me vibes of where Patsu worked from Castle in the Sky. I just wanted to point that out.
yeah, I can see that. Uh, so yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't have much to add. I just think this is a very like fun episode, like very, very fun. In fact, I would go as far as to say some of the other ones we're going to talk about are also quite fun, but not to the level of episode 9. I think episode 9 is extremely fun.
On
Like,
top of that, it's criminally underrated too. Like, I understand it might not be like the most riveting or exciting
mm,
episode, but in terms of just fun episodes that have things that connect over to the main plot, well, of FMA03's main plot, it does a pretty damn good job and feels both satisfying
yeah,
and like a bit of a natural sort of cool down period for Ed following 6, 7, and
yeah.
8.
And also keep in mind that FMA's always been, you know, has always had its areas where it's took its time and like quality the plot. Rush Valley exists for a reason.
True that. Yeah, but
Okay,
honestly, like it's really
so
funny. Like I don't really have
yeah,
too much to comment on this episode going further either. Like it doesn't really do anything massively wrong. And
yeah.
honestly, even though I think other episodes have bigger highlights, this episode is just a well written across the
Well,
board, solid episode, and I have no complaints here.
I think it's just that, it's like there are some episodes that can just be like really phenomenal while not having like a lot to say because it's like they exist for a some episodes exist from a different purpose. Like
Yeah, some episodes
um
move to push the plot along, whereas others have much more like exciting events, battles,
because
revelations, etc.
unlike some of these other meandering episodes, I feel like they did the most they could with Mining Town. Like I
Hmm.
don't really feel anything was not accomplished. Like I feel like this set out everything it needed to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, epic episode. I love the concept of Mining Town for sure. It's a great early concept. Obviously basic, but since it's early on,
Hmm.
that's it fits right in. So I guess we'll move on to episode 10 then. And episode
Episode
10,
10.
okay.
Okay. Actually, unlike the last episode, I have
Uh,
quite a bit to say about this one because
I just want to mention right off the bat that this is going to be very different from our usual episode thoughts because me and Quint have very, very, very different opinions on this episode.
and it's really funny because, like, I remember on our old video, I said this was probably my least favorite episode of FMAO3. I don't think it's a bad episode. I don't think it's like, honestly, I think the only reason why I really don't like it is just because it's sort of one and done. I mean, I know that's not like entirely fair to it because there's a lot of one off episodes. I do like the aesthetic of this episode. There are some good laughs. I don't know. I just feel like it was a bit basic. I will say though, I absolutely think this is an enjoyable episode, and I wouldn't turn down rewatching it. Like, if this is my least favorite episode and it's still above average, I think that says a lot. But I still don't really like. I don't know. I'm still not particularly like excited for it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I just don't understand what puts it like below episode 4, to be honest.
Honestly, I don't really know. Like, to be fair, I could genuinely do a toss up between episode 4 and 10. Like, part of me, part of me wants to give episode 4 some slack because, oh, it's only episode 4. But at the same time, I also know, like,
Yeah,
yeah,
but
it's
like
not that
episodes.
great. And episode 10 is, like, not that far
Well,
off.
no, like I want you to keep in mind though, episodes 1 through 3 exist,
Yeah,
and
and those are
that's
totally,
kind of
those are great. So,
yeah,
yeah, honestly, like, it really is a toss up. Like, you could ask me between 4 and 10 which one I'd prefer, and I'd probably change my mind on a dime if I'm being honest. I don't know. Maybe I really got to rewatch FMAO3 again to really solidify my feelings. But between these two episodes, it's just a weird toss up.
oh, all right, well, uh, so I
I mean,
guess I'll
don't get
just
me
let you
wrong. I think
finish your.
Siren is a witty character. I like Ed's interactions. The whole city on the water and how it's inevitably going to sink is an okay enough set piece.
Yeah,
And like I said, there are some good laughs here. I don't know, maybe I'm just being overly critical, but I could never really like fully get into it as compared to other episodes anyways.
right, yeah. So if you've got anything else to say, say it now, because I'm just
Yeah,
gonna let
obviously
you
you're gonna
run out.
because you probably have a lot to say as well, seeing as our thoughts
I
are very
do,
different.
I do, I do, and I'm just gonna try and wait till you run out. That way, I can
Yeah.
just go.
Um let's see now. There was one other thing I was going to say, and that was well, I was gonna crack a Persona 5 joke, but that's not really that funny when it's titled The Phantom Thief. Like, I was gonna make a Persona 5 joke, but I'm sure literally everyone has done that, so yeah, I think I'll
Yeah,
close
and
it off now.
yeah, and also how Maze Hughes is apparently Markiplier's past life.
They got the glasses. They both got the glasses.
Yeah. Okay.
Alrighty, your turn.
Okay. I like you. I used to have a distaste for Phantom Thief. I used to think the episode was just mediocre. Like I used to think like I didn't dislike it as much as episode 4, but it was easily like the second worst to me. At first. But then something interesting happened. The more I
And
thought about it, like the more I thought about the show in general, the
mhm,
more I thought the more I just kind of softened up on Phantom Thief because like here's the thing. The only thing that is potentially like a problem to me about it, to be honest, is really just because I do think it's a well written episode by then. Knowing Tashiko Inoue's like track record, because a lot of the time he has like he just doesn't tend to have his name involved in a lot of like well written projects. So I was
mhm.
surprised to see that this was actually well written for once. The only potential problem I can see is that you know I guess they are getting a little too close between Ed and the nurse, but even so, like I will admit, when I was revisiting the episode, I feel like people are kind of reaching there. I
Yeah, it's
mean,
like I feel like that
it's
was just Siren's way of sort of stringing Ed along. It's not like they were actually trying to nudge, nudge, wink, wink it. If you get my drift.
yeah, it's honestly just like I think it's just like mere admiration and stuff. Like they respect each other a lot.
Like
Um,
they under, and that's kind of the funny thing, actually. Now you mention that. Sorry, I'm just gonna very quickly bring up this point. I was kind of surprised that Ed sort of just understood where Siren was coming from and why, like the she was doing
right,
that.
yeah.
It's kind of funny. I didn't think Ed would do that, but when I really stopped to think about it, it does kind of make sense when you really, really give it a lot of thought.
I mean, yeah. I mean, at the same time, like, what was the worst that could happen, really, by Ed saying that? I mean, it's like he's kind of. I mean, he probably should not do things that are like. He's still a human. He should still say things that are like not entirely. Um, bro, like this is
Uh,
bad. This is bad for podcast, dude.
yeah. Um.
Uh,
Damn.
you
I lost
can't
my train
stop
of
and
thought as
wheeze.
well.
You can't stop and wheeze.
Nah, don't worry. Don't
Uh,
worry.
so
Well,
hold on,
it'll be fine. I mean, it is a podcast, and most people treat podcasts like live streams anyway. So a pause or two isn't like
really?
that bad. From what
I
I see,
don't.
that's how my brother, my father, my other friends treat them. Now, I can't speak for the general
Uh,
crowd of podcasters, but like, think of it like a radio show. Like, there are people on radio shows who take pauses. Maybe they cough, maybe they sneeze,
uh,
maybe they go off on a different topic. But as long as it reroutes back over to the main plot or the main point, it
okay,
shouldn't
so
be
wait a
that
minute.
bad.
Okay, so wait a minute. The point I was trying to make is that Edward also like this should be obvious. Like I was actually hoping you would finish the sentence for me, but
Oh,
the
I wanted to give you your turn, so I didn't want to interrupt. That is, admittedly, I'm gonna say it's a bad habit of mine that I interrupt. Um, but yeah, like when you really stop and think about it, I mean, Siren, despite yes, she's not like evil. A thief is still a thief when you get down to it, and Ed just sort of like letting her do her thing, knowing this. I don't know. Maybe I'm just having a hard
well,
time sustaining
no,
my
that
disbelief. Hmm?
Yeah, but like Ed calls her out on it though a lot.
He does. He absolutely does. And to be fair,
Which I
I can
mean, he's not
understand
gonna get
why.
like fault her. That's stupid.
Yeah, and I understand why the first time he let her go, he was under the impression she was raising money for the hospital. Obviously, that wasn't 100% true. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching too, honestly. I might be reaching too. Like
I mean,
it's so huh?
I used to have a problem with this, but it's also worth noting that the character decisions being this way doesn't mean they're poorly written.
Yeah, and it's like with this episode being a one-off anyways, I'm not going to be taking points away just because some characters make decisions that I don't happen to agree with. And let's be real here. Let's be real here. Any character who makes a bad decision or a mistake, you're not going to agree with anyways. And it's they need to do that in order to set up conflict. So, I'm really not losing any sleep over that.
Yeah, it really just depends on how delicately they write it. Like if they write it with like care, and I think this is written with care, to be honest. Um, so the reason why I
Rabbits.
love okay,
Rabbit
see,
ears.
Phantom Thief.
Literally, Siren has rabbit ears. I'm sorry. I just had to get that out.
So like the Phantom Thief is like a constant uphill battle for me because like honestly, like the more I watch it, the more I like it. Like every single time I watch it, I like it more. I'm not even joking.
You find something new to
Like,
appreciate about it.
well, it's not even that really. It's just
Oh.
kind of like I enjoy it more. I find that like the writing just flows better. It's
Hmm.
like weird. It's um. So like the reason I Phantom Thief is actually because, by the way, I doubted it at first. I actually gave it a 5 out of 10 when I put it on the, again, when I put it on the Twitter thread.
Hmm.
I put, I did a 5 for quality and like an 8 for enjoyment. But see, at this point, I would actually just say, nah, I actually thoroughly enjoy this one. I actually think it's like really cool. Okay, and the reason for that is because yes, even though it exists at a very basic premise, and it's not progressive or anything in any way, or like it's not like
It very
it's
much is
not
a self-contained episode when you really boil it down.
like even though it doesn't really uh like accomplish much. It Here's the thing. It For me it makes the premise just see all the scenes I've noticed
Hmm.
come together nicely for me. Like I genuinely think this is just a great comedic episode. Like I find it really funny, and uh, like genuinely, like I laugh at most of the scenes.
And honestly, you know what?
And
I'll give credit to Phantom Thief where it's due. I do think as a comedy focused episode, it does get the laughs right. So in terms of accomplishing that, it absolutely succeeds.
but like my praise doesn't stop there. Like I genuinely like the town of the Siren. I think it's a unique and
Got a
like
very Venice,
nice looking
Italy
location.
vibe to it.
Yeah, yeah, I like it. I don't have much of an issue. Like
Yeah,
it looks inspired to me. Like, and it looks like it's something that was actually made from freaking scratch.
yeah.
So like, but like, I also like I I think even though that the plot doesn't have many like plot moments,
Hmm.
I think that this one does that well, though. At least far better than what it could have. Like, I can understand why people dislike this episode, but honestly, I don't know.
It's not even that bad is the funny thing. Like
I think there's something to it.
even though I don't like love it, I still will admit I think it's a well written episode. and one that I wouldn't
Oh,
necessarily hesitate to rewatch. And honestly, if my
well,
least favorite episode I still think is above average, it says a lot for the quality of the show as a whole.
well, it's funny you say that because this is, for me, this is my favorite Toshiko Yanami episode, and another 9 out of 10 for me. Because like genuinely, like I just don't have like it's like 9 for me. I don't have much to complain about or gripe over. I genuinely just think this is another awesome world building episode that honestly, like, I think it's more meaningful than giving credit. Like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm not trying to say it's deeper, and it's not deep. It's one of the most shallow episodes of the show, but I think that what they do is genuinely fun. And here's the thing: this whole part is like the fun period anyway. So I'm really glad this is placed where it is.
That's true. The episode
So
is placed in a good position, so I can give it that too.
So okay, we're gonna cover the two-parter now. Now this one I have interesting thoughts on, by the way.
Want to
I
know
have
what is
very
really funny? It's so funny. The Other Brothers Part 1 and 2, episodes 11 and 12. Are we just gonna group them together, or are we gonna go like a segment for 11 and 12 individually, or are we just gonna group
well,
them
I mean,
together?
of course we're gonna talk about them, as they come, because it's like episode 11, episode 12, but I mean, you know, I just thought I'd introduce the arc this way, that way we're seeing, is like, oh yes, let's talk about the other brothers arc, and then we just do part one and then two.
Alrighty.
So like the last start, or well, yeah,
Excuse me, sorry about that. You want to know what's
the
really
last,
funny about The Other Brothers Part 1 and 2? These were a set of
funny,
episodes I originally was not that into, if I'm being honest. But, like,
um,
huh?
uh, you kind of ignored my question.
Oh, sorry. Can you say it one more time? It
I
both
asked
threw
if
me
it
off.
was me or you who was starting, and then you just immediately went to talking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to start it?
I mean, not if you want to. I mean, you kind of started as anime, so
Uh, okay, tell you what. I'll start part 1 in episode 11, and you can start part 2 in episode
mm,
12. Sound fair?
sure,
Awesome. Okay.
sure. Oh well, we really shouldn't be talking about this for extensive periods of time. So
Yeah,
carry on.
I really got to plan these podcasts better. Okay, so The Other Brothers Part 1, Episode 11. Just gonna throw in a very quick comment here before I talk about it itself. Fun fact, when I first watched this two-parter, I wasn't really all that into it, if you can believe it.
How
And it
was it
was upon
feeling?
my rewatch that I said, it's honestly not that bad. I mean, I do think there are some not as well written plot moments, like the whole like identity or the imposter, like, wait, you're not the Elric, blah blah blah. I don't know, that one just kind of threw me off a little bit. But
Mm,
I will say there is some intrigue here. Adding context to the redstones definitely helps. And I was kind of intrigued by the whole. It's funny because I know they were doing the whole like there's a disease going on, with like the red water and all that. But
mm,
ironically, that same plot thread would be used for the Lust episode way later on. But they at least actually like explained how the disease worked and how it was handled here, if I recall correctly. Having two
mm,
episodes really helps out, and also Reed and Russell are called back to later on, so
mm,
it is a neat little thing, all things considered.
yeah.
To be fair, though, a lot of episode 11 is mostly just setup. I mean, seeing as this is a two-parter, episode 11 is going to be a lot of the setup, whereas episode 12 is going to be where more of the, well, as you'd imagine, events that are much more crucial to the overall two-parter happen, including a fight scene, which, while short, was good enough, and an interesting set piece with, the red water, red trees, and all that. But yeah, as for episode 11, honestly, I probably have the least amount to comment on this one.
Well, so like I so is this a good segue?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to comment on episode 11 as well, or if you just want to go immediately to
So
12, if you have nothing to add, it's fair enough.
yeah, you know what? I'll just go through it and then you can just finish up. Uh,
Right?
so like, you know, for Lalaka disjoint.
Fair enough.
So okay, so episode 11 is like okay. The thing about that being set up is like I much prefer the setup over uh what 12 did. In fact, like this is kind of gonna be combined anyway in my
Fair enough.
speech because I basically did already. So like,
I was kind of doing that when I was talking because I mentioned events in episode 12. It's kind of hard to talk about a
so
two-parter without speaking about events that happen in both parts.
well, I do think it depends on the two part. Or like, I think the thing is that these are kind of similar episodes, so it's kind of hard to distinguish them in your mind.
Yeah. Like the
So
stupid
like,
murder mystery two-parter of Aincrad. Fuck that shit. This is way better than that.
yeah, this is way better. So like, okay, I'll, okay, you know what? I'll start by saying this. I can completely understand why people dislike the other brother's plot. Like, this is one of the few things I can understand all three detractors for. I can understand why they wouldn't, this wouldn't be to their taste. I can absolutely get that. Thing is, like, and like, yes, even part two, like, I do think has a lot more of a case than people make it out to be. In fact, that's what I'm going to. Yeah. So like the first part being set up, I much prefer because like it builds the intrigue and it made me care more.
Uh-huh.
Like I've always preferred part one of Other Brothers over part two because the thing about part one is like it actually does have a lot of progression to it. Like
Mm-hmm.
you slowly work your way into the town and poster plot, which, to be honest, I don't have much of an issue with the imposter plot. I mean, it doesn't really set up anything that's necessarily poorly written to me. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
can't really think of like the worst I can think of is like, wow, Fletcher must be annoying or whatever. And I'm like, here's the thing, like, you already know my stance on a lot of it. I don't find characters like I don't tend to like all characters annoying very often because like it's a little too subjective that I can't even make out what it means half the time. Like
It's
as
like
if
you, there has to be a reason for the character to be
like
called annoying. Like if you can point out enough valid reasons for why a character annoys you, I think it's fair to call them annoying, but if they don't like do a lot of things that you can really like point to it an example wise, it's a bit of a tougher case to make.
so like so like yeah, I know that like that disease stuff doesn't get like full focus until like the end where
Hmm.
like it's like they they had an experiment. It's kind of like a parallel. They had an experiment that went wrong. With like Ed and Al,
Hmm.
and now they're having an experiment that went wrong. And here's the thing: they treat this as a small moment, and I actually like this because it's like you're getting to see people that are probably suffering just as much as Ed and Al. I mean, let's be realistic here. I mean, if you get one of your like, if you get dangerously affected and your body is like touched and all this like weird stuff, like that's bound to have lasting effects. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, look
well,
at how radiation works.
yeah, like at least when the episode happened, I mean, I know that the ending like cleans a lot of this up, but keep in mind, like when this happened, there was a lot of suffering. So like this is like, it's really tense because
And they're wearing
like
masks like it's COVID.
yeah,
I had to throw
yeah,
that
yeah.
joke at least one time out there. It's so funny.
Honestly,
There's so many things that had that before the pandemic. There was like Spider-Man 2018. There was the other brothers, the whole
um,
masks. There's a disease going around. It's really funny how so many things had that before, like that was a thing.
so like I don't have much of an issue with part one. Honestly, I just don't really see much to really criticize. That's I was basically just building up my part two take, and that's the okay. Thing is that part one is better, yes, but part two has grown on me by it. The thing is, right, is that you spend the episode on quite a lot of like cave-like aesthetics, and it's
Hmm.
not quite as pleasing to look at. And it's not as substantial in progression. Which, to be fair, it shouldn't be, judging as it's part two, but it does feel a little more cheap at times. You'll even notice in part one that it ends on a cliffhanger, and
Hmm.
while the freeze frame might look a little iffy, it is like a really solid cliffhanger. Like
Yeah,
like it makes
it's a
you
good like, ooh, what's gonna happen next time sort of feeling.
yeah, like it's well done. Like so like in part two, um the thing is that not a lot really happens. Like the most that does happen is that the disease gets focused. Like with how it is in the place. In
And a
fact,
fight
Ed
scene with a
even
guy that has a red stone gun that looks like a teapot. But yeah, there was some. It's really funny. Like, there's a couple things here I didn't find that memorable. I mean, keep in mind, I don't even remember the name of the villain guy who had the redstone gun, so that should say a lot, honestly.
yeah. So like, but like I want to mention this. I actually do love this episode, to be honest. Like I think okay, and the reason for that is actually the ending. Like I did not expect this. Okay, here's the thing. I did not think anything of this ending at first, but see, when I revisited it for for the weekly binge that I did.
Hmm.
Yes, like I did a weekly binge where I would watch one episode every week. I'm still on it. It'll end in
Hmm.
April. Uh, so like, but the ending is just heartwarming to me. Like the way everything's like tied up, the
And actually,
way
because you
that
mentioned it being tied up, I got to give credit. I do think using the trees to absorb the water
yeah,
was a clever solution. I got to give credit. That was a pretty
yeah,
clever
no, that
way to
was
solve the problem.
it's about using alchemy in like big and small ways and all
Hmm.
that. Like that's a constant throughout all three, and I'll mention more about that later. But
Hmm.
honestly, while this is again a basic like arc, basic episodes,
Hmm.
I think it's much better than giving credit for, to be honest. No, I do not think it is as good as episodes 9 or 10. Yes, I just said 10, yes.
All right.
I do think that this is still a pretty phenomenal set of episodes.
Yeah, and
So,
honestly, for like our first
but
actually, I'm speaking, this isn't even our first two-parter because the first two episodes are a two-parter. But as another entry into the two-parters of FMA, this one turned out pretty solid. It's not my favorite, but I got to give credit where it's due. And like episode 9, I think it's a bit of an underrated one as well.
and here's the thing that I love so much about these episodes. They actually do focus somewhat on alchemy. Like,
And they do
and
press the main plot ahead with a bit of lore regarding the
yeah,
redstones and all that. So there is plot relevance here.
yeah, it's just it's just really like honestly like FMA World Building already existed anyway, so like why not?
Yeah,
Why
why not add
why friggin'
more?
not? Yeah. So like so yeah, so that's covered. But now let's talk about the real one,
The
the real
real
deal.
deal.
Uh,
With
Full
that
Metal
name
versus Flame.
and your sword skills, are you the real deal
Well, I
or
mean,
what?
I was gonna let you like talk about part two, but I think you've already kind of like said
Honestly, yeah,
everything.
that's the funny thing about some of these episodes is that, I like them or, like, again, I like literally every episode of FMAO 3. Yes, even the ones that I say aren't like my favorite, I still enjoy. The funny thing is, I don't really have like that much to comment on. I mean, maybe that's a good thing. It can mean these videos are a bit shorter, or we can like cram in more content per video.
I
But
will
yeah, a
mention,
lot of these episodes, 9 through 12, I don't really have like as much to say about in comparison to our other videos where I could go on a decent while about things. But you know what? That is most definitely not the case for episode 13, Full
no,
Metal
no,
versus
Quinn,
Flame.
no, Quinn, I have to talk about something else first.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Because, like, I want to mention that even though episodes 9 through 12 are, like, even though they're not as good as some other episodes, and I want to mention that it, even though it seems like I'm fanboying over O3, I do have my gripes with O3. Like, O3 is one of my favorite shows. However, I want to mention there are a few episodes I dislike, not just episode 4. And I want to mention that, like, I by no like there is some room for potential. It's why the episodes that I do have a problem with bother me so much, and I'll get to those later on.
Fair
So
enough.
because they are still some of them still are to come.
You
So
want to know what's really
episode 13.
funny? I
Mm,
am sort of that way with Gun X Sword. Look, I might think, look, I made it no secret Gun X Sword is my favorite anime of all time. Would I say every episode is a 10 out of 10, hit the ball out of the park quality? Absolutely not. I mean, in
yeah.
fact, I think episode 3, the one with the introduction of the El Dorado 5, not a bad episode. It's just not as exciting as others. Then there's Fall of the X Spot, the fan service episode. Not a bad fan service episode, but I know those can be a turnoff, pun fully intended, to fans. So yeah, even though there's a series that I feel similar about, I do still have my gripes with it. Not enough for me to not give it a 10 out of 10 score overall in terms of the series, but not every episode is a 10 out of 10, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, a 10 out of 10 series shouldn't have every episode be a 10 out of 10 because no series would be a 10 out of 10 at that rate.
Oh yeah. It just depends on if you have enough episodes that are like, you know,
Substantial.
of masterful quality.
Yep.
Like not every episode has to be a 10, but just enough of them.
Yeah.
So like
And that's how I am with Gun X Sword.
uh
Like, there's a lot of episodes in Gun X Sword I always look forward to seeing. And same thing with Full Metal Alchemist 3. There are some episodes here that I do genuinely look forward to seeing, and we're actually coming up on one, ironically.
so like you can go first on this one because like honestly like episode 13 I have like almost nothing to add to the discussion, to be honest. Like
Honestly, it's funny because like episode 13. Remember when I first watched episode 13? I said that I found Full Metal versus Flame probably my favorite of the early series. You remember when I said that,
mm,
right? Now,
yeah.
I don't know if that still holds true now. I do have some potential candidates earlier that I might enjoy more, but I still really like this episode. For one, Ed and Roy duking it out as part of a test to keep his alchemy, credentials is a cool idea. I love the Roy Mustang. I love dogs moment. God, that was so fucking hilarious. Um, Fight scene was good. Again, it sort of hints to the Ishvalan War when Roy has a bit of PTSD flashing back to his days in the Ishvalan War during the battle with Ed. I do like the creativity Ed has during the battle, and honestly, like in general, this episode is a surprisingly good balance of both action and comedy. I mean, Maze Hughes showing off an image of his daughter during the speech was just so delightfully wholesome. And then everyone just
Yeah,
throws stuff, and I'm like, "Stop talking about your daughter!" Just, I don't know. I got such a laugh out of me. But yeah, this episode is
yeah.
just a really good balance of comedy, action, and even some dark undertones when you really analyze Roy and the other state military people's expressions and reactions. Like, shit, like, this is an episode I could most definitely rewatch at the drop of a hat. And obviously, Roy
So
Mustang. Like, I made it no secret, I genuinely love Roy Mustang. He's such an entertaining character. He's got lively, charismatic energy. He can be a real badass when he wants to be. And honestly, like I said, he has some really funny lines and scenes. So it really helps give Roy Mustang this very identifiable and enjoyable character. Even if he's not 100% in the right. I mean, when you're part of the Ishvalan War and you killed Ishvalans, you're not exactly you got blood on your hands, let's just say. But he just feels
yeah,
like someone I honestly
um,
would get along with in real life if he's someone I like. No wonder Maze Hughes and him
oh,
are such close friends because they get along so well.
don't don't worry. I'll talk about the double standard that people have with Scar and Roy later on. Because I'm really looking forward to that, and I will cover that pretty in depth. By the way, I'm not just gonna like lazily skim past or anything because I genuinely know how it works. So
Fair
like
enough.
um I don't have much of an issue with episode 13. I do think it's a masterpiece. Like I know that I'm saying that so casually right now, as if it's so obvious.
Hey, I would say the same thing for Gunnex Sword, so I don't blame you. I would
But
probably say, oh yeah, Gunnex Sword is a masterpiece. It's the perfect anime. Rada, rada, rada. God, when my video of Gunnex Sword comes out, if I ever make it, it is gonna, there's gonna be a lot of that there.
now I'm not mentioning this because I need to, but I'm mentioning it because I want to. And that's that this episode was based on a bonus chapter, and like for the manga, like it was a bonus chapter, and what they did was they combined two bonus chapters, and they 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 had it fit all three's like framing of things. Like
Yeah, it
you
fit
can
its own little
see,
narrative.
yeah, like because like it still adds to the plot because it what it does is it expands on those concepts to the point where it's a fun episode, but it's
Hmm.
also one that is plot relevant because the context actually adds to like Roy's eventual like like it adds a lot of dimension to Ed and Roy's rivalry, like their whole thing going on
And
with
heck, this
their
is the debut of Riza's dog. I think it was called Hayate. So yeah, this is the
mm,
debut of the
and
dog Frieza
also
would have. that's,
this
that's so
is
funny.
also the this is also the debut of Juliet Douglas, who is very important. One
Oh,
of the
yep, you're
most
right. Oh God, how can I forget about that? That's right. Julia Douglas does first appear in this episode.
yep.
Ah.
And like this is
Also,
why
it's funny. Actually, hold on. This is relevant. I forgot to bring this up. Roy does bring up past events such as Maja Hall, the other brothers, and even Siren for that matter. Is she a 10 under the mask? And Ed's like, so you know everything I do. Great. It's funny. It's funny.
so I like there's the whole point is that this is supposed to be like a really fun episode, but also one that it's you see it builds back into the plot, but in a way that's natural. Like Roy even gives like a recap of past events, like it's a freaking boss rush mode. Like
Yeah. And I just love Ed's commentary. He's like, "So you know what I'm doing? Great." I also love the impression Ed does. "Oh, where are you? Oh, I couldn't see over my paperwork because you're so short." Ha ha ha! I don't know. I just love how snarky Ed is there.
Oh,
And then
also the
Al hiding
anime.
a cat inside of his armor, and Ed's like, "Is your stomach purring?" And Al's like, "No."
Also, the animation for the fight is phenomenal. It is some of the
Very
most
impressive for
smoothest.
2003 standards.
It is some of the smoothest animation I've seen in all three. Like, it looks eye candy. Like,
Yeah.
I have watched the clip so many times just to see the explosion effects.
God,
Uh,
really, it really reminds me of Chrono Crusade. Like, honestly, I'm impressed. Like, this does not feel like 2003 animation. It was really ahead of its time.
yeah.
And the
So
fact that it gets better and better the more it goes on still impresses me.
yeah, it, it gets noticeably less, like inconsistent also. Like, I mean, it did start off somewhat consistent, but you could still tell there were rough edges. But
Yeah,
those, I would argue those go by like as early as episode 7, probably.
yeah,
Well, actually, no, episode 5. Like, no, like I would say episode 5. I like episode 4 has animation issues, but like episode 5 and onwards is like I can't think of many caveats to anything past that point.
yeah. Honestly, like, it's so funny. I know I don't mean to sort of sideline the conversation, but yeah, like honestly, like Fullmetal Alchemist '03's animation really just I don't know, maybe I'm a broken record here. And I know that I'm no animation expert, so I don't obviously like it's so funny. In my reviews, I've been cutting out the sections about animation and audio. I sort of just group that into the world section. But when there's a series that has really good audio or a series that has really good animation, I really feel the need to comment on it, especially since, again, I still think this holds up really well even to this date.
Yeah,
And
like
something I've always been of the
um
mindset of is that fight scenes is usually where the animation is at its best. And while FMA03 definitely has less fight scenes than Brotherhood, the few fight scenes that are here definitely stand out more as a result.
well, I want to mention. Sorry, I know I say I want to mention a lot. It's actually starting to annoy me now. Uh, but like, uh, like I should like. Sorry, hold on.
Mhm.
I really, really hate saying I want to mention.
I know. You want
But
to know what
like,
I was about to say? I have I say you know it's funny as a sentence opener all the time. It's crazy.
yeah, that's kind of
I know,
rubbed
right? Like
off
you
on me.
open up with sentences that way, and it just you get so used to it that he just keeps going.
But like, Bones is a studio I'm very conflicted on in terms of like presentation. Like,
Mhm,
there are a lot of issues with a lot of their works, in my opinion. They are far. Here's the thing, they get a lot of hype. I have never, ever thought they were the best studio for animation or anything like that, although they are still pretty good for animation, but like honestly, I think it's more that it's just a lot of the visual styles they play around with
mhm,
don't pay off sometimes. Like
mhm,
they used a painter style for FMAB,
hmm,
and that didn't really work out too well for me because while the animation was really good, it was still like the stuff they were using for it was like not that visually appealing to me. Like I don't like it doesn't help that the lack of backgrounds like really hurt because in all three there's a lot of things that look built from scratch. Now I should mention by the way, in case it seems like I'm calling out Brotherhood exclusively for all this, no, there are several issues with how My Hero Academia looks actually, um, and that's a lot more recent.
And I
So like,
wouldn't know because I haven't watched MHA, but I'll take your word for it.
yeah, so like I have problems with how Bone Studios work because it's like, yeah, like the animation usually looks nice. It's just a lot of the things that they use with that animation don't
Mhm,
make it like blend in too well, and
mhm,
as a result, I feel like I'm looking at a lot of really off,
mhm,
just not like it's all about the aesthetic. I'm like, does this look nice? And a lot of the time, I'm like, wow, these interiors sure look boring. But
mhm,
then here's the thing: All 3 is the only. It is one of the only animations by Bones not
mhm,
to give me any major caveats. I mean,
mhm.
yes, like even some of the expressive ones I have like like issues with. I think Soul Eater was Bones, if I remember correctly, right?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it definitely
Because
has a similar aesthetic, so it might be.
yeah, that show looked good. It did not look perfect though. So like the so like don't get me wrong, there is absolutely some that's better than others, but the only one that really like doesn't give me like kind of a weird like a weird aesthetic from watching it because like I know people have problems with like the tint on all 3 or whatever. Like it's kind of that they use a more darker kind of tone with like you, you know like they think it looks like I think it should be obvious what they're implying is what they
Mhm.
think it looks like edgy and stuff, with
Yeah,
the
they're trying to make it
whole
look gloomy and dark and all that.
but I think it looks perfectly fine, honestly, most of the time. Like the only time I ever had an issue with it, actually, it's a very specific thing,
Oh,
and I'm just gonna mention events from future on. I know we're not there yet, but I might as well, judging
all
as
right.
it's up. Um, Obviously, we're not gonna cover the episodes, but I want to
Yeah,
mention
because
them,
I
especially
think
because we have
episode
the
13
timer.
is a good place to start that to stop for this stream because we've already crossed the hour mark. But yeah, so go ahead.
Yeah, but like obviously I'm not gonna cover some way in the future or anything, but like I'm just
Might
more
as well
so
because
gonna
we've talked about it, so we might as well mention it.
I'm more so gonna touch up on it. So like episodes 30 through 33 look visually very similar. They have like a grey interior aesthetic, and
Mhm,
that's the thing, right? Doublelift is, to be honest, it was even though the arc has really grown on me, like the art is awesome. I love the Doublelift art now. The problem I have with it is that it is one of the duller looking aesthetics in FMA. I
mhm,
think it's one of the weaker ones.
mhm.
And O3, while I do think it looks fine, like perfectly fine, it is still a little like a lot you are kind of just in tunnels for quite a lot of it, and
Mhm.
it's all gonna look the same. That is the
Yeah.
only real issue I have with Wolf 3 in terms of like aesthetic. I honestly do not find it boring to look at. I think that they did a lot to make it really pop, even with the relatively muted color palette. Which, here's the thing, yes, it has a muted color palette, but I should mention though, it's not like Brotherhood didn't have even more of that. In fact, a lot of Brotherhood is tunnels.
I mean, look
a
at
lot
Briggs.
of
Look
it.
at Briggs.
Yeah, and also not even just that. Like the whole father area.
Oh
That's
yeah, the whole thing
also
underneath
tunnels.
Central. That thing's just pipes and tunnels.
Yeah, and those are honestly quite boring to look at. I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, the room with the big chair in it looks cool, but like they're only in that for
Yeah,
like God,
that's
yeah, no wonder I fucking hate Envy so much because you fight him in the most dull location.
also like
Hmm.
also has had to make it CGI, which I don't inherently have an issue with, but even still, like I just
CGI
don't
Envy
like the
is
way it looks in both.
ugly. Fucking ugly, bro. Like, look at this
Yeah,
thing. Ugh.
look, if CGI clips and if MEO3 can get criticism, then I can criticize CGI envy. Like,
And keep in
come
mind,
on,
those
guys.
CGI clips are just in the opening. This is something the anime, not only within its own show, but during fight scenes, proudly displays. So,
you know what?
yeah,
I-
if there's gripes there, there's most definitely gripes here.
You know what? Usually I wouldn't like bring up Brotherhood, but I do actually want to mention
Hmm.
it anyway. Like I'm fine with mentioning this offhand. Is
Hmm.
what like I like. Here's the thing: people are saying that CGI Envy looks perfectly fine because of how creepy it looks, and I'm like, dude,
Okay, but like, that's only gonna
okay.
go so far.
Well, you want to know what? The manga existed beforehand, and I just want to mention, by the way, that even though yes, it was only like one page, and that's like and like yes, it's not like overly impressive. I want to mention that that was well drawn on top of actually looking cool. Lys does not look cool. Lys looks like a lizard who's trying too hard.
On top of that, the lip syncing does not match the fucking voice. It
the,
doesn't.
the
Like
lips
you
look
think you
so
think with
weird.
CGI being used for budgeting reasons, like I understand it can be hard to draw, hand draw lips, moving, especially when you have English and Japanese, because you have to edit the audio and all that. But because it's CGI, which is already used to cut costs, I don't see why they just had his mouth move up and down like one of those wind up toys.
Yeah, just like I'm sorry, guys, but if you criticize any CGI, you can't just give it the copium excuse of yeah, like you you can't just give it the copium excuse of well,
It's
it
Brotherhood.
looks
It gets a free pass.
well. Here's the thing: it's like they say this is better than other examples, right? But I'm like, is it really though?
Yeah,
Like,
is it
is it
really
really?
though?
You all would have died in 2009.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Like,
This is 2009 CGI. Silly me. How could I
yeah,
forget that? 2009.
yeah,
And it looks like something out
and
of Jimmy Neutron.
yeah.
Fuck, Jimmy Neutron. God, look. There's a reason I don't like Jimmy Neutron, and honestly, that is because of the animation. I know. Look, I normally do not drop a series because of visuals. Jimmy Neutron is an exception. It did not age well at all.
Okay, to give it credit, we okay, just only compared to Brotherhood, right? Like,
Mhm.
only compared to that, am I gonna give it credit? I just want to say that at least Jimmy Neutron, I can laugh at that. Like, I can actually laugh at how terrible the CGI
Yeah,
is.
and part of me thinks
Whereas,
it might have been intentional because the story is not meant to be taken seriously. Brotherhood is trying to take itself seriously. So this goofy ass, stupid CGI lizard of a character I already hate Nah, that ain't cutting it. It's not creepy. It's just dumb. It's
Yeah,
dumb.
it's like uh, there's nothing like creepy about it. Yeah, it's like
Like the creepiness
it
comes
just
from
looks.
like the voices, the hands coming out of it trying to like grab onto people. I get that, but like that's not, I don't know. I think people are smoking something when they tell me CGI Envy looks good because it really doesn't. I mean, okay, look, it's not the worst CGI I've seen, but it's most definitely on the lower side of the
I
spectrum.
mean, yeah, honestly, like I wouldn't go as far as to say it's as cursed as the Cold Lyoko CGI, but it's like it's it,
It's
like
still not great by any
it's
stretch of the imagination.
it's low on my tier. And yes, by the way, for Shield Hero fans out there, yes, you're gonna hear it from me. I think the Spirit Turtle looks far, far better and easier to look at than CGI Envy. No, it
Honestly,
doesn't look
all of the
great, but
CGI in Shield Hero looks better than Envy, if I'm being honest.
of course. I mean, yes,
You would hope so with that being 2019.
even though it's funny, even the dinosaur had more movement than CGI.
I know, right? I know. Fuck me,
Like,
man. And hey,
yeah,
the fight with the dinosaur dragon at least was good. Mainly because I don't have
yeah,
to deal with this stupid character I don't care about. Fuck you, Envy. Actually, fuck you.
it doesn't help that the story context isn't much better, but we'll get into
I'm
that
jealous of
later.
humans. You should feel sorry for me. Yeah, you know what? How about I stuff you in a jar and kill you later? How about that?
And I will end it on that note.
Alrighty. Well, that does it for this podcast. I'm Quinn866. Have a good one. Any closing thoughts, Katashiki?
Yeah, all three is really boring. Like these episodes meandered like crazy. These episodes were mega cringe.
Alrighty. And I
Giga
just.
cringe.
Okay. And I'm stopping the recording now.
Worst part of all three.